Please don't, sir. And speaking of janky sites, well, this isn't a janky site, but I think it's just a fun segue.
It made us feel like it was a janky site. I won't get into it.
Yes.
It was, we were racking our... Before we go into this, we spent like 40 minutes going over this next article of what the fuck is going on.
We haven't done this deep dive of show prep in such a long time.
For one article. For one fucking... Like... It was like it was almost like it felt like I was back in high school.
Yeah.
And you read a short story, and then give a summary on it, and both of us read it like 3 times. And we're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
And I was glad too. Well, let me just get started.
We'll get into
but
it.
yeah, absolutely. I was just like, okay, we're like racking our brains together. We're like, okay, how can we
Like,
talk about this?
Like, I want to at least mention it, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
And clearly, the person that wrote this didn't know either.
Yeah, man, this really nuts stuff. So we're gonna rip the Band-Aid off here. Usually we don't talk about politics here in Gamers for Life, but this was a really interesting article, and it would kind of be ridiculous of us to not mention it. So this is a Kotaku article that recently dropped, and Patricia Fernandez, she's the new editor-in-chief there, so I'll at least give her one of these.
I wouldn't.
Anybody that gets money, gets promoted, that's cool for me. But that's all I do. So, but the interesting thing here on the article, I'm going to first read what Colin Moriarty said here on the Twitter that he posted this June 29th, and then also shout out to Colin Moriarty. I've been listening to you for, God, almost over 10 years, man, since the IGN days, and then a little bit of Colin Last Stand stuff.
Because just for context, it was Colin Moriarty's response, I guess, onto the article to begin with.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to read this here in quote. He says, he posted the link of the article, and he says, in quote, "This letter is from Kotaku's new EIC, editor-in-chief, is fascinating. The through line that the old way, in quote, of games coverage is dying, has no core fan base anymore, depends on entirely on SEO, and likely can't be saved, is shockingly honest. I give them credit for writing this," end quote. And then he posts the link of the article. Now, talking about the article, this was the difficulty that we had, and we summed it up with the main sentence that Arthur helped curate, because the article itself, it goes into a lot of different stuff without even really saying it. Like it's funny, Colin Moriarty is like, he's like a professional journalist because he took everything that she said and just put it into that small thing on Twitter.
Which we couldn't do. So, like, as I mentioned, that this was a high school project to sum up what the new editor-in-chief wrote on Kotaku.
Yeah.
We would have failed that project. In an our defense, again, there's a lot to unfold here, but if I could sum up the article in one sentence, it's like when someone speaks for like 10 minutes and there's a new topic or subject every minute, and after those 10 minutes of talking, nothing was said.
So basically half of your college professors.
Yeah. So,
where you're like, okay, so we're talking about derivatives.
Yeah, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. So I'm gonna read the title of the article just because if you guys are curious about checking out the article, you can. But I'm gonna pose with our main question. But the title of the article here is "Hello Kotaku, it's me, your new EIC," and then it says as the subtitle, Patricia Hernandez is back after her previous stint as deputy editor. And basically, the main thing to wrap up in the article is there's a lot of shit that she said on this, which I think to me it didn't. She said like 17 different things and didn't clarify them.
It was a lot.
It was a pretty annoying op-ed in my opinion, personally. But the main pose here that I think it's kind of wraps everything up, which Colin Moriarty already did: should game journalism and politics be separate? And then obviously the question was posed because it seems like a lot of game journalists and websites today, they kind of lean towards more what is happening politically, whether they're on the right or the left. And obviously your average video game reader, it seems like they kind of get what's the word for it? It seems like they kind of get it force fed, maybe.
Yeah.
And then just kind of put like they don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And kind of like educated when you're not asked to be educated. So I'm going to toss this to you first. Because you had some interesting points that you had, that we talked about before recording. So what are your thoughts as far as this? Game journalism and politics being separate, and the video game journalism just as a whole.
So again, this article, again, there was a lot. I mean, like every two sentences had nothing to do with the previous two sentences, but this is the main thing we wanted to take from it. Because it's especially these past 2 to 3 years, it's becoming really kind of on the forefront as, again, gaming journalism and politics. I got into gaming really heavily as a kid via escapism, and a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Like this, like almost any hobby, a big draw to the hobby of your time, attention, passion, and effort. It's purposely. It's escapism. Like, here's the world, especially last year with COVID, last year with COVID, like we said, gaming arguably kept the majority of the population fucking sane. Cause like here's all this shit happening. Fuck it. I just want to shut off my brain and either play a game by myself or play a game with my friends and talk to my friends.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned one time, we were playing Sea of Thieves, and we weren't even really playing. We were just kind of just digitally hanging out, talking about life and the world, and just hanging out. But we just happened to be in a game.
Yeah.
So for me, should politics and game journalism be separate? To a point, yes. But if they're not, it needs to be done right and constructively, unbiasedly. And that's I think both constructively and non-biasedly is where you start seeing a lot of the problems when it is quote unquote force fed.
Yeah. So to go back as far as like, for me, I think there's a world where both can exist. Because some people do treat video games as a glass menagerie, as you mentioned, the escapism, and then some people can be interested in games through politics in general. I think obviously Last of Us is a key prime example. There's a lot of pressing issues in both games, and even like the DLC and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But that makes up the DNA of that game, and them telling a really intense story, which is totally fine. And then also too, when you have there's some stories that can connect with people where you have, when it comes to like the diversity of the game, you can change your character to different color, things like that, and and then just various interesting stories. So I think there is a world for both, but when it comes to the specific gaming journalism, as far as politics being separate, I feel like there's some stories that can involve that, and there's some that don't really need to, or to be unbiased, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that there are certain companies that do lean a certain political spectrum, and they're, treating certain video game developers a certain way or whatever, and it can be a really interesting conversation.
Like Blizzard, for example.
Yeah.
Like Blizzard's censorship of multiple aspects after Tencent got involved.
Yeah.
And the coverage on that was accurate.
When it comes to the game journalism, to me as a whole, like, the spectrum has changed. I think as far as like, because it sucks, because like I remember getting like those old school magazines, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Xbox magazines, and then just like the PlayStation magazine and all that stuff, and just like reading video game like news and
Game Informer way back in the day, Nintendo Power.
Yeah. So Electronic Gaming Monthly, right? I think that's one too.
Tips and tricks.
Yeah.
I remember them all. Yeah.
Oh yeah, mad tips and tricks.
So, and so that's why for me it's like, do I believe? For me, it's like that is some of my things. Like, do I believe politics belongs in game journalism? No, because this industry survived decades without it. But again, the world, the culture's changed. So to a point, it's going to happen. But again, that's why I argue it's like, okay, if it's going to happen, one, don't force feed it. It's again like, hey, Cyberpunk's coming out. Let me read the review. Yeah. I don't like cops. I didn't help the cops. What that does not belong in this review. And then again, don't force feed it. Don't be biased, and do it constructively.
Yeah, and I don't know if I necessarily. For sure, definitely. I wouldn't. I don't know if I necessarily agree as far as like it's never been in it before. I think it's just that it was never talked about, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't important to talk about. However, I think you can have it can be compartmentalized. You know what I mean? When it comes to a video game review the game like as much as you can. Talk about the game. You know what I mean? Like, and I agree with that. Talk about the game, please.
Yep.
You know, and then when it comes to stories that have some type of connection to politics, like just have it be a different category on the thing, and then people can choose what they want to read. Like I feel like it can be as simple as that versus the higher ups of these game journalism companies to dictate everything under everything being politicized in games. I think that is wrong, and I don't think it's needed. So I think there is an importance to it, but I think it needs to be compartmentalized.
I agree. The compartmentalization.
Yeah.
The word I can't fucking say.
Compartmentalized, yeah.
Thank you.
It can be separate.
Thank you. So separate I can't even fucking say it. Yeah.